Good morning, welcome to Kolel Boker. This week is Vayakhel, and today's topic is what really excites God, what really gets Hashem going and makes him very happy. There was once a rabbi who was on his way to give a class. He's in a taxi in Israel, and the taxi driver is going really, really quick. He's driving recklessly, and they have an accident, and unfortunately they both end up in heaven. And as the rabbi is standing there, he's waiting to be shown his chamber in Gan Eden in paradise. And he sees that, to his surprise, the driver gets sent straight to Gan Eden, to the great rewards. And he is told to go to the left. He's going downstairs. He says, I thought this is the world of truth. So the angels explained to him, Rabbi, you don't understand. When you spoke and wouldn't stop speaking, people just slept during your sermons. But when this driver was driving so quickly and recklessly, everyone in the back seat took out their tehillim, their psalms, they started to daven to Hashem. We want to arrive on time. When Hashem in Torah wants to describe creation, wants to tell us that He created the world, it's enough to use one or two verses. Okay, 26 verses is all Torah uses to tell us about Bria Shemayim Va'aretz. The whole first book of Sefer Bereshis has in it 1,500 years of history. And based on this concept, we understand that Torah speaks in a very precise way. Torah never uses extra words. We definitely don't say extra chapters. Torah is a very accurate, specific, and precise text, and every word has meaning, and every letter has meaning. And actually, Chazal, our sages, tell us that not just the letters, but even the tagim, the crowns on the letters, if you look in a real Torah, not in a published, printed version, but in a handwritten Torah scroll, it has a certain font, which some letters have crowns on them. And our sages would explain to us what you could derive, what laws could be understood from crowns on the letters. So every detail is very, very precise. Because Torah is not just history, of course. It's not even a book of laws only. It's a guide. It's a manufacturer's manual of how we should live our lives. And a fascinating example of this, the Gemara tells us in Psachim, Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis, regarding Shimon HaAmsuni. There was a great sage, Shimon HaAmsuni. Other people say it was Nehemiah HaAmsuni. He would derive, explain every word S in the Torah. You see, when Torah speaks, there's a lot of times the word, we'll call it and. But in the beginning, Bereshis bara Elokim Eis Hashamayim, the Es Ha'aretz. In this week's parsha, we have Eis and S and Eis and S. How do you really translate the word S? Some people translate it as and. Some people say it's untranslatable. But it's something which seems to be quote an extra word. And this Shimon HaAmsuni, says the Talmud, would explain every single S, what it's coming to teach us. And he successfully. It says, Kabed es avicha ve'es imecha. You should honor S, your father, S, your mother. What's this S? And he says the word S is coming to teach you that the Rabbi is achicha hagodel. It's coming to include that your oldest brother you also have to honor. In a sense, it's an extension of honoring your parents. So, Kabed S, every word S, there's nothing extra in the Torah. Now, he explained that, and he went through every single S successfully, explaining what each one means, until he came to, it says, Es Hashem Elokecha Tira. Torah says you should love, you should be afraid of Es Hashem. Now, what's the S? You got to explain that it means something else. Who else are you supposed to be afraid of? The dentist? I mean, who are you afraid of in addition to Hashem? So he said, whoops, I take it back. I guess there is really no explanation for the words S, and all of my interpretations of every single S of the Torah, explaining what each one means, is wrong, because there's one which there is no meaning for it. It's just a way of writing. Until Rabbi Akiva came along, and the great sage Rabbi Akiva said, no, don't back out so quickly. Every single S has meaning. And when it says you should fear Es Hashem Elokecha, the S next to God's name doesn't refer to, what are you afraid of? It refers to Torah scholars, Talmidei Chachamim, that you should have a level of yira a level of fear or awe or reverence for scholars of Torah as well. The idea here is, however, you see that every single word in Torah has meaning. We learn the entire Torah Shebaal Peh, or majority of Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral Torah. It's not written in the 5 books of Moses. You learn it from explanations that were derived or understood or proven from different words, nuances, extra letters in the Torah. Which leads us to the following question. These weeks in the Torah we learn about the constructing of the Mishkan, the temple, the mobile temple that the Jewish people had in the desert. And Torah uses 5 parshas, 5 Torah portions to tell us that they did it. Okay? Which is very uncharacteristic for Torah. First, you tell us that God commanded Moshe to do it. Then Moshe commands the Jewish people to do it. And then the Jewish people do it. And then we account for everything that they did. Again and again and again. Why? Can you just tell us the Jewish people did as God commanded Moshe? That would be the normal way for Torah to describe things. And yet we find here that Torah goes on and on to tell us, that the Jewish people made the Mishkan, and they were told to do it. And so it's so repetitive that Rashi in our portion, which is the classic commentator on Chumash, he tells us, I'm not going to explain everything again. Go back to the prior parsha. I explained it the first time it was mentioned. You want to know what a mizbeach is or details about a menorah and so on and so forth? You don't have to look at now. I'm not going to explain to you again because it's the same words as it was in 2 parshas ago or 3 parshas ago. So Torah is extremely repetitive when it comes to telling us about the Mishkan. Why is that the case? We see that we learn so many laws. Even the word es teaches us laws, details, important messages, and yet to have extra parsha, so many of them. The Abar Benel asks this question, and he says, Torah mentions the idea of building the Mishkan in detail 5 times. And each time, Pam Bechlal, Pam Befrat, the construction of the Mishkan, the utensils, the kelim that were inside of the Mishkan, what did they have, what was there, and each time, Asher Tziva Hashem La'aseisam, Hashem commanded to do it. It's literally again and again and again. And as I mentioned, Rashi even says, I'm not going to explain the commentary all over again, just go back a few pages, and you'll find it. So it's a very, very important question. You're talking about 212 extra verses between these 2 parshas. And why is it the case? Let's take another example. How do you know what is forbidden on Shabbos? What are the 39 malachos? Okay, how do you know what's asur? Torah doesn't tell you exactly every single thing. It's derived from a juxtaposition, the fact that you put together Shabbos and the laws of the Mishkan together. We learn that things that were done in the Mishkan, juxtaposition, thank you, that things that were done in the Mishkan are forbidden to do on Shabbos. So Torah doesn't have to tell you in detail what's forbidden on Shabbos. And we have 39 basic laws, and out of those we have derivatives. It's called tuldas, children of the malachas, which we learn in laws of the Mishkan. So again, you're not giving us details. You're not telling us so many important laws specifically and precisely. You just give us an extra word, a message, the fact that one chapter comes next to the other chapter, and yet when it comes to building of the Mishkan, it goes on and on and on. The Bartenura tells us, explaining the Mishnah in Chagiga, it says that if you look at all the laws of Hilchos Shabbos, Chagiga and Me'ilah, they're kahararim atluyim b'saira, which is an expression which means it's like mountains that are hanging on a hair. Just like a hair has nothing to hold on to, right? It doesn't hold on to anything. But you're managing to support all of these laws and details and specific instructions of Shabbos. You're managing to explain to us them based on hanging on a hair, meaning one extra letter. And yet our whole parsha is repetitive. At least it seems to be. So obviously there has to be a little bit more of a message here. What are we trying to impart? What's the implication of having this this situation here? Now, obviously, it's a very important time in Jewish history. We're talking about the Jewish people that are building a home for Hashem, and it's very important. But let's look at some of the details. In 2 days, they gathered enough material to build and construct something which they spent 75 days building. Okay? Hashem told the Yidden to make a Mishkan the day after Yom Kippur. It was ready on Chafei Kislev, which was the first day of Hanukkah. It wasn't Hanukkah yet, but we pushed it off. The building of the Mishkan didn't take place until Nisan, because Hashem wanted that the building of the Mishkan should be in the month when Yitzchak Avinu was born, his birthday. He was born on Pesach. So we waited. But we did all of these things very, very quickly. Okay? In 2 days, you collected everything. What are you doing for 75 days? You're building, constructing, and so on and so forth. Now, let's divert for a second. Where did the Yidden get all the materials from? Where did they get it from? That's right. Okay, so they had gold and silver, but they had many other things. Okay, for example, they had cedar wood, right? Cedar trees, very, very tall, trees. Where did they get it from?
That's right.
So it's trying, but there are many explanations. Some explanations tell us that the Yidden got it from neighboring merchants. Where do you get that from? Because Torah tells us that the Yidden, it's a mitzvah actually, that in your camp you should have a place, we'll call it a bathroom. Okay? There should be a separate place outside the camp where if someone has to use the bathroom, that's where they go. Okay, but the question is, we know that we ate godly food. In the desert, what did we eat? We ate man that came from heaven. Man had no extras, had no waste. Everything you ate became part of you. Why does a person have to go to the bathroom? Because some of the food is good and the body uses it, and some of it the body expels, sends out. So there is no bathroom. There was no need to go to the bathroom. So why did they need a bathroom? If everything they ate, there was no waste to it. And commentaries explain, the Farshim tell us, that the Yidden would buy food, kosher food, but they would buy food from neighboring merchants, neighboring nations. I guess you had an app and you ordered food or something like that. But they got with a good hechsher, they got food. In addition to what they had, they wanted to have a treat or something else. If they ate that food, they would have to go to the bathroom. And therefore Torah says that you have to have sanitary conditions, and it's the idea of honor and holiness, that waste should be outside the camp. If they were buying food, then they could have bought anything. They were buying many things from the neighboring nations, and you could see that they bought it from those people out there as well. Okay. Now, there's obviously another explanation that the Yidden got the beams. We know that he took it out of Mitzrayim with them. When Yaakov Avinu went into Mitzrayim, he planted cedar trees. And he said, there's going to come a time you'll leave this place. And Hashem is going to tell you to build a Mishkan. And you're going to need wood. And you're going to be in a desert. Take them with you. And the Yidden who told the Egyptians, we're just leaving for a couple days to go serve Hashem in the desert, they were cutting down these massive trees and taking them with them. Okay? How do you know all this? Why should we even assume that? The Yidden went to offer offerings to Hashem. They said they're coming back in 3 days. Why do you have to explain that they cut down trees? So the Rebbe explains like this. The pasuk says, "V'yikchu li truma," take for me a truma. What's the word v'yikchu mean? V'yikchu sounds like they had it already. The term v'yikchu means you had it. It was already in your reshus, and all Moshe Rabbeinu had to do is take it from them, not get money from them to purchase something. Take from them materials, or have the Yidden give materials to construct this home for Hashem. And that's why Rashi says, they didn't go buy it from other neighboring nations, like some opinions say. They had it with them. That's why it says, take it. So one word, v'yikchu, tells you a whole explanation of where the Yidden got the wood from. That it was Yaakov that planted it, and they cut it down, and so on and so forth. And here we have so many extra words, and actually this week's parsha and next week's parsha, more than 1,000 extra words. What's the reason? So I want to share two explanations. Number one, I don't know the source of this. There's a Rabbi Heber, who says the following, very interesting explanation. You know, there's once a fellow who went to the store to buy salami. He comes into the butcher. He says, "How much is salami?" He says, "It's $5 for half a pound." It's $5 a half a pound salami.
Is it kosher?
It's kosher.
Okay.
$5 a half a pound salami. That's why. So he says, "Yeah, it's $5." He says, "Okay." He goes across the street to the next store, and he says, "You have salami?" He says, "I'm out of it." "But how much is it?" He says, "When I have it, it's $1, $1 a pound, half a pound." So he comes across the street. He's like, "I was across the street, and he sells salami for $1. How could you sell it for $5?" He said, "Why didn't you buy it from him?" He says, "He doesn't have it." "Oh, he doesn't have it. When I don't have salami, it's 50 cents. People have a tendency to have a big gap between theory and practice. Between the ideas that we have in our head that we're going to do. We have this great plan, and we spoke about it, and we wrote it down, and it's all worked out. When it comes to practice, it tends to be a little bit different. Theory and practicality, unfortunately, there's a big gap between them. The previous Rebbe says that he once went with his father, or rather his father went, he was traveling, and he went to see a gallery of paintings by a Italian painter, Raphael. And there was a certain painting that was there, and he's looking at this painting, and it's a farm, and there's wheat in one of the fields of the farm, and on this stalk of wheat, there's a bird that's perched on it. And everyone's marveling at this beautiful painting, and it's so accurate, and it depicts exactly what goes on, the size, everything was amazing. Some simple fellow walks by, and he's like, "This painting is completely out of line. It's so not reality. I mean, this is not what it looks like." And everyone started screaming at him, "You know who painted this? This is like a tremendous, famous Raphael, a painter, so on and so forth. How could you say that?" He said, "I'll tell you why. See that bird that's perched on a stalk of wheat? The piece of wheat is completely straight. And when a bird goes on it, I'm a farmer. And I know it bends a drop, just the way it works. Okay, so what you see here is a talented painter, an artist, and he really did an amazing job, but it's not reality, because he's just not there. Very often we have this plan. We're going to build a Mishkan. And here's what it's going to look like. And this is going to be the size. And these are going to be the measurements. And this is how grand it's going to be. And everyone's going to participate. Da-da-da-da-da. When it comes to the end, somehow it didn't happen yet. It's being pushed off. We were going to. We wanted to. Maybe next week. Comes the Torah and says, I want to underscore with extra quote words and letters to tell you that it did actually happen. It wasn't just Hashem told Moshe. It wasn't just Moshe told the Jewish people. They actually went and built that thing. Very often in politics, they say, why is it that while you were campaigning, you said you're going to do this and this and this and this and this, and then when you came into office, you didn't do any of that? And he says, the things that your vision or your perspective that you see here is not the same that you see from there. In other words, when you're in theory, you have an idea, it's great. Once you get to the office, it's different in practice. Whether it's a good excuse or not is a different question. But very often we live in a world where theory and practice have this gap. Hashem wants to underscore and tell us that He told us to build a Mishkan, and we did, in true practical place. I want to tell you another explanation which helps us really understand this properly, of why is it that Torah is so repetitive in this topic of building the Mishkan. There's different ways. There are different ways to contribute. Right? People give money. People give other types of gifts. But when Hashem comes and says, build a Mishkan, in 2 days they had everything they needed. But there's a greater level. And that's the level of giving of yourself. Doing your part. If the Yidden gathered everything in 2 days, what did they do for 75 days? They were building it. That's true. But in addition, we know that when it came to weaving, the women weaved or wove. They wove in a very special, talented way directly off the sheep. Apparently, when you're weaving certain types of materials, if you first cut the wool from the sheep or shear the wool from the sheep, and then you try to weave it, it's whether it dries out or something happens to it, it's not as good. If you really want to have the best quality and the greatest talent involved, you do it while it's still on the sheep. It doesn't hurt the sheep, by the way. It's not painful, but they weave it while it's still on the sheep. Now, or the goats. Now, it says like this, that Hashem told the Yidden to give money, which they did, but in addition to that, every person that had a talent or a skill brought their skill to the table. And they spent their time doing it. It wasn't like, okay, Hashem, you want me to do something? Here's a few dollars, I'm done. I paid my dues. They got involved in it. They cared for it. They were really doing this with their entire being. And Hashem says, that's what I appreciate. And that I'm going to repeat again and again and again, because it's not just they wrote a check. They were involved with their own being. We find a similar thing with Eliezer. Avram sends Eliezer to find a wife for his son Yitzchak. And he told him, if you don't find her, come back. Find her somewhere else. You'll be absolved from this shvuah, from this oath that you've taken. What happens? He goes. And Hashem tells us that he goes. And then when he gets there, he repeats what happened. And it's, again, very repetitive, uncharacteristic to Torah. And Torah tells us, you know why? Because Yafes Ichasan Shel Avdei Aves Yeser Miterasan Shel Banim. The speech, the talk of the servants of our ancestors are cherished by Hashem even greater than the Torah, the teachings of their children. How could that be? Torah, teachings of their children. And the explanation is as follows. Eliezer could have went and said, listen, I did my part, it didn't work out, that's it. What did he do? He put himself into it. He got involved. He tried. He went. And when he saw it wasn't working out, he davened to Hashem. He saw that there were some issues. He made certain types of signs. They were challenging him. He started to tell them all these different details about what happened, impressing on them. He put himself into it. And Hashem says, there's two ways of serving me. You could serve me with bare minimum, do what you have to, and that's great. And you did what you did, and everything is fine. But there's a greater level. When you put your heart and soul into it, when you give of yourself, when you really care, you're sincere. And that's really what Hashem wants. The Torah tells us, or the Gemara rather tells us, Rachamana liba ba'i. The Torah wants the heart. Hashem wants sincerity. He wants where a person is serving him not just the bare minimum, not just the requirements, but he's doing more than he has to in the deepest way possible. And this, we'll conclude with the following. It explains to us why the Mishkan was never destroyed. Think about it. The first Beis HaMikdash, the first temple, was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed. The Mishkan, before they built the Beis HaMikdash, they took this Mishkan, the mobile temple, the first tabernacle we had, and they buried it in the ground, and they built a new permanent one. That temporary one, which seems to be, what is it? Just a tent that we're using in the desert until we get a permanent structure. That lasted forever. It was never destroyed. No enemy of the Jews ever was able to touch it. Why? Because it's buried somewhere in the ground. Why? Because the Yidden did it with their heart and soul. They didn't just give for it. They went in and they actually, this one had a talent of weaving, that one had a talent of was painting or dyeing, coloring. This one, whatever it was they did whatever they could do from their own heart and soul, and that never gets destroyed. That's why Hashem repeats so many times. 5 sections talk about this. 5 times we're told again. Why? Because it's not just another mitzvah that we're doing. You're doing it with your heart and soul. When you put yourself into something, it'll last forever. There's a similar idea which is said regarding the Western Wall. Why is it that the Kleisel, the Western Wall, is still standing when the rest of the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed? So they say that when it came to building it, many Jews got together. They hired, workers, craftsmen, whatever it was, And they paid them, and they did a very good job. But they were a group of Jews who couldn't afford to pay anyone. And they wanted to have a part in this. They said, we'll do it ourselves. And they went and they built that Western Wall. The Kolel Boker was built by these Yidden who didn't have any money to hire anyone to contribute in any other way. And even when it was destroyed, for reasons beyond our understanding, and it says because of senseless hate and whatever else, but that wall is never destroyed. Because you did it with yourself. You did it with your own efforts, with your heart and soul. It wasn't just, here, do it. Thank you.